founder and host of CONNECTpreneur. Who's here for the first time ever? Okay, well, hopefully you'll be joining us in the future. This is our 48th in-person event, but it's the first breakfast event we've had since February of 2019. So I want to thank our sponsors. So CONNECTpreneur, we are when COVID hit, we went online. So we do monthly online investor pitch meetings. We have one on the 26th. It's free. You can go on our website and sign up. It's the world's largest investor pitch event. We've done them since March of 2019, and we're so thrilled to be back here, and we have so many people to thank for this. I just wanted to let you guys know about CONNECTpreneur. We are a global community of 25,000 investors, family offices, entrepreneurs, innovators, and other service professionals, and we're so thrilled that we could do this today. I want to thank our sponsors, some of whom will be speaking today, but certainly MPED, which is a deputy mayor for planning and economic development, George Washington University, we'll hear from President Wright soon, the Golden Triangle bid, thank you, Leona. Next, powered by Shulman Rogers, Tishman Speyer, who owns this beautiful building. I was in real estate in the early 80s. I remember when they built this building, and it's just great, Dan, what you're doing here. Congratulations. So thank you for hosting, and Dan will welcome us in a bit. We have DHG, we have NFP, and I want to shout out Rich DePippo. Where are you, Rich? There he is. Thank you so much, Rich, for putting together everything with GW. Rich and Jim Chung in the front row have been instrumental in putting this together with the Golden Triangle. So we're really indebted to you guys, and we hope we can come back in the fall, have some students involved next time. We have WeWork, Ryan and Wetmore, Northern Virginia Chamber, AEG, Stella Pop, New York Life, Truist, and a lot of our sponsors have tables. So please do, meet them, exchange some cards and whatnot. We have the annual Wharton DC Summit, Startup Grind. We have the Robert H. Smith School of Business at Maryland, the Dingman Center, and the Dingman Angels, Keiretsu Forum. We have the Baltimore Angels, Center for Advancing Innovation, the Institute for Excellence in Sales, Early Light Capital, FITSE, Frederick, Maryland, Georgetown University Entrepreneurship, Maryland Tech Council, and Refraction. So let's give it up for these awesome sponsors. Thank you guys so much. So I know we're running a little late and people are on a tight timetable, so without further ado, I'd love to bring up Leona Agoris, who's the Executive Director of Golden Triangle Business Improvement District. And by the way, all of our speakers have their biographies in the program book. But Leona, thank you so much for everything you've done, and come on and say hello.
Okay, well, thanks, Tien, and good morning, everybody. As Tien said, my name is Leona Agaritis, and I am the Executive Director of the Golden Triangle Business Improvement District. And our mission is to create an unforgettable downtown experience. And on your way in, you probably saw some evidence of this and you didn't even know it. But our job is clean streets, lush landscaping, amazing events, public art, rain gardens, active parks with tables and chairs, and ultimately economic development. I want to start by thanking Mayor Bowser and her team for all the support they've given us, because thanks to them, we have a vision to make this even better as the world kind of comes out of this collective COVID fog. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about how this neighborhood is going to be changing. In just a few years, you're going to be seeing apartment buildings taking the place of some of the older office buildings in this neighborhood. You're also going to see a brand new rebuilt Pennsylvania Avenue. And I want you to just visualize Pennsylvania Avenue in your head, just 2 blocks away. In a couple years, it's going to have large planted medians on both sides of the street. It's going to have protected bike lanes, rain gardens, public art, changes to the sidewalks and the parks to make them more welcoming for people. So it's going to be in a great and amazing place. It's not only going to look different, but it's going to be different. And that's one of the reasons that we're here today, because we're so excited and we want to. Penn West is going to be home of the Penn West Equity and Innovation District. And so we want to kind of talk to you and be with you as partners to make that happen. It's going to marry the strength of this really robust, established business community that's already here with this amazing university, GW, and a unique geography right next to the White House. And it's something we think that nobody else can really claim. We see this ultimately as a place where startups, accelerators, established companies, and research work side by side with the companies who are here already, the university, large international institutions, and of course, the federal government. It's going to focus on 4 sectors, and those are health, finance, government, and education, with the themes of DEIS, sustainability, and public policy guiding everything that we do. We're thrilled to be here with our partners at GW. You will hear from President Wright in a second, the Deputy Mayor, Falcikio, landlords, and other partners. And we want to work with you too, which is why we're here today. So I want to close now by encouraging you to reach out to us with your thoughts, your ideas, your opportunities. You can reach us through LinkedIn or, of course, through the website, which is goldentriangledc.com. But we welcome talking to you. This is an opportunity not only for the BID and the university and the businesses here already to shape a neighborhood, but it's an opportunity for all of you and all of us together to shape what I think is a gift to the city and a gift to the country ultimately. So good luck to you today, and I hope you enjoy today's program.
I'd now like to bring up President Mark S. Wrighton, who's the president of George Washington University. President Wrighton, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your support of our program.
Thank you very much. It's really exciting to be here. I had no idea that there would be this vibrancy here in Washington, D.C. in connection with the startup community. So it's a real pleasure to be here. And in fact, I've already been inspired by several conversations I've already had. So a participant as a first-timer in CONNECTpreneur, I'm really excited and very enthusiastic about the prospects of advancing entrepreneurship here in the district. At George Washington University, we're very much interested in these issues. We have a great many students who want to be involved in new enterprises. Indeed, many want to start new enterprises. We have faculty across the institution who are very interested in entrepreneurship and innovation. And I've already met several faculty members who have new companies and excited about expanding them. One important effort is one that Leona mentioned, and we're very fortunate to be here at a time when we're launching the Penn West Equity and Innovation District. And in this regard, George Washington University is aiming to be the anchor university, partnering with the Golden Triangle Business Improvement District, partnering with the DC government, and building owners here in the region. I'm very pleased that Leona is already proving to be an interactive and strong partner. I have met just briefly Dan Dooley from Tishman Speyer, and I think these partners together with the Deputy Mayor will be very important as we move ahead. The Innovation District is particularly important to me because I've been involved in both MIT and at Washington University in St. Louis. And each of these innovation districts will have unique character, but many have an anchor research university. And at MIT, Kendall Square has been transformed, and it is a hotbed of new enterprises and innovation, engaging not only the faculty and students of MIT, but also the faculty and students of other academic institutions in the greater Boston area. In St. Louis, I was involved in the development of what is called the Cortex Innovation District, and this initiative has been extremely successful. We drew together important partners in St. Louis, of course, the city of St. Louis. We engaged with the University of Missouri St. Louis. We engaged with St. Louis University. We engaged with the Botanical Garden and BJC Healthcare. In an area of the city of St. Louis, we have created the opportunities to nurture the development of new companies, and this has been extraordinarily successful. As I say, each of these innovation districts around the country all have unique elements, and I see in this area, in the Golden Triangle, a tremendous opportunity. And I thought, sitting in St. Louis, looking to Washington, D.C., that the economy here would be bulletproof. But I have learned that we have a great opportunity to fill what you might see as a vacuum with new enterprises operating right here. Look at this facility. I hope when we have a meeting here in the not too distant future, it's occupied by new enterprises, including those from George Washington University. I've been meeting with the academic leadership of George Washington University since the public announcement of my appointment. I made 7 trips to Washington, D.C. in the fall, and I learned about this innovation district aspiration. And I have encountered all 10 school deans as enthusiastic about this enterprise. And you may not think about it, but there's a lot of infrastructure that's needed for a successful development of this kind. I might just note that in law, we have a great law school, and one of the top programs in the nation is our intellectual property law program. So we have engineering, and of course, we have business. But I've also encountered innovators and entrepreneurs in the Milken Institute School of Public Health. You may not know, but we are expanding our participation in biomedical research through expansion of our academic medicine activities. So there's a lot to do at George Washington University. And oh, by the way, we have 10,000 or so very talented individuals who live literally just a few blocks from here. And they're eager, they don't sleep. They're the kind of people that we need to have successful new enterprises. These are the 18 to 22-year-old who are here for their college experience, and many are looking forward to participating in this innovation district. I might just give you a few facts that I've just learned, in these several months that I've been here, just to illustrate George Washington University's success in the last several years. You know Jim Chung, he's been a fireball of activity. In 2020, we had more than $20 million in licensing revenue. We were named the #1 university venture competition in 2021. We have launched more than 350 new ventures in the last dozen years. And for those new ventures, more than $1 billion of follow-on financing has been given. We're also listed among the top 25 global unicorn founder universities. So that means we have several new enterprises that are stemming from the work of George Washington University and its alumni, founding companies that are worth more than $1 billion. So I hope I will see many of you here today becoming directly involved in the Innovation District. I'm confident that we're going to have a very good meeting. Dean Anuj Marocha is here from our School of Business, and he was one of the first academic leaders that I engaged with on this Innovation District. Anuj, you're a tremendous leader, and I'm looking forward to our business school taking a major leadership role in the development of these new enterprises. I met a couple of alumni here, and it's evident that we have a strong position, and I'm looking forward to doing even more as we look ahead. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, President Wright. And I guess you are a sort of St. Louisan, having been there for 27 years, but my wife's from St. Louis. We all love St. Louis, but you know, St. Louis's loss is our gain. So we have, you know, I want to thank the president again. And speaking of St. Louis, we have another great St. Louisan here. I want to bring him up. It's Dan Dooley, who runs the region for Tishman Speyer. He's a managing director at Tishman, and he's our host today with this beautiful building. And Dan, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Tian. And I share Dr. Wrighton's enthusiasm for this morning. This is really, you know, real estate people, we think when we have events, they're a lot of fun and a lot of energy, but nothing compared to the energy I witnessed this morning here. You guys are really quite a group. As Tian said, I'm Dan Dooley. I'm with Tishman Speyer, and we are honored to welcome all of you to International Square this morning. Just a brief introduction on Tishman Speyer. We're a global developer of commercial real estate in over 30 markets, 4 continents, and cities throughout the world from Boston to Beijing. We're a diversified company that has a variety of office, residential, life sciences, and mixed-use developments underway around the globe right now. You'll find us in places like Harvard, where we're building their world-class life sciences and technology complex, to markets like Austin, Texas, Beijing, and others, where we're doing office and residential projects as we speak. We also have a significant investment in the prop tech space that you might find a bit unusual for a commercial real estate developer. And that's something that's relatively new to us, and I think it's something that separates us from a lot of our competitors. This is emblematic of the innovation that Tishman Speyer has become, the innovative company that Tishman Speyer has become and will continue to evolve into. We have 2 examples of what I'm talking about. One of them is International Square, and one's across the street at Studio. You may have noticed a little bit of dust on your way into the event this morning. International Square is embarking on a $50 million renovation that will transform this building into an unparalleled live, work, and play environment. An overused term, but I think when you hear what we're doing, you might agree. We will be creating a destination-oriented food market with 16 unique chef-driven concepts downstairs. That will be augmented by a really great Spanish restaurant. This is all being run and curated by 2 gentlemen from Think Food Group, which is Jose Andres' company, very, very well known by probably most of you. Richie Brandenburg and Ruben Garcia, who's a Michelin-rated chef, will be running this. You may have even read about it in the Washington Business Journal or seen something in the Washingtonian about it last week. But this is coming at the end of this, the end of this year, and you will, it'll be a place you'll want to come down on the weekends. We'll have events that'll attract you. When you get off Metro and you cut through our building like 5,000 people do a day, you can stop off and get coffee, sushi, whatever they're offering at that period of time. We'll also have a 200-person plus conference center that we're building downstairs and a host of other amenities. We think in a world where a lot of companies are struggling right now to bring their employees back to the office, we think this is compelling and will be a magnet for companies that choose to occupy here and in our buildings that surround International Square. But International Square is part of a greater ecosystem that we've created at Tishman Speyer. This diverse offering is delivered throughout our system with our hospitality approach. Our relationship with you can begin as something as small as 1 person or grow to a full floor like we're sitting on today, or even a full building somewhere around the globe. The way we do this starts with Studio, and I don't know if Joe Nasinski's here, but he runs that for us. As I said, it's across the street. Studio is Tishman Speyer's co-working offering. And you can start with a hot desk license and grow to a squad, which is a room that can hold 3 to 40 people. The difference is the level of service I think we deliver in our co-working environment, and also you're dealing with the owner of the building and the owner of it as opposed to somebody who's a tenant in the building. So I think it brings a much nicer relationship and certainly more stability into your operations. As your needs mature, we're here. As you graduate from Studio, we have a platform called Studio Private, which is a series of small suites that are ready to move into and that you can do a lease as short as 1 year. As your company matures and continues to grow, we're happy to accommodate you in buildings like International Square or really anywhere around the 30-plus markets that we operate around the globe. In closing, I just want to say when you think of Tishman Speyer, think of innovation and think of flexibility, which is something that I think we wouldn't have said 5 or 10 years ago. I think we would have just said, think of us as somebody who can rent office space to you. But we are really quite a different company today, and we'd love to show you that at any time you want to take a tour of Studio. Joe Nasinski will take you, or I can take you through International Square after the program's done today. But most importantly, have a great conference today, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Dan. And Dan, now that the Caps are out of it, all I can say is go Blues. All right. And our last speaker of this segment will be Deputy Mayor John Falcikio, who is doing a tremendous job. Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and he will make some remarks. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? All right, so how many entrepreneurs are in the room? Let's see it. All right. How many folks in government? Okay, we're outnumbered. That's good. How many folks in higher ed? Cool. Anybody in the medical field? Okay, good. All right, so the reason I ask is because if you think about before the pandemic, the District of Columbia had 800,000 jobs. And we say that private industry and government was a way for us to really come together with the best and brightest talent from around the world coming to Washington, D.C. So the simple way that we said the makeup of our economy is in 3 words: the feds, the eds, and the meds, right? So when you think about it, 800,000 jobs, 200,000 of those jobs were actually in the federal government, right? So there's 372,000 federal workers in the region. 200,000 of them were right here in Washington, D.C. So about a quarter of our workers are here as federal workers. And then our other employers, when you look at the top 15 employers in the District of Columbia, 5 of them are education, institutions of higher ed, and 5 of them are medical, like hospital systems. And so you could see that our economy is a place where people come to do good. Now, what we need to layer on top of that is tech. And we think that tech can be for good. Mayor Bowser likes to say that if you could swipe right to find love, if you can order food to come at the drop of a dime to your house based on an app, why can't you do that to also lessen the lines that people wait to get our human services, or to know where to go get tested, or where to go get your vaccination? So those are the ideas we want to invest in. So Mayor Bowser leads an organization of 37,000 dedicated individuals, and we spend about $19.5 billion each year to do everything from supporting businesses. We have a real estate portfolio, but we also do those government services that a city does, from picking up the trash to keeping our streets safe to educating our young people. So I'm mentioning all that because, again, my boss has 37,000 employees and $19.5 billion budget annually. So for the entrepreneurs in the room, how many think they have an idea that could help us get that work done? By a show of hands. Just 1, 2, all right, I see them. Raise them high, raise them high. So what we're excited about is Mayor Bowser is also investing $2 million into what Leona mentioned, which is a partnership between the District of Columbia with the support of President Wright and GW University, led in real good partnership. I say partnership because he spends a lot of time on calls, WebExes, and just straight badgering us, Jim Chung, from GW, making sure that we get it right. And what Jim has said is what the Penn West Equity and Innovation District should be about, and what GW's contribution should be. As President Wright said, it's a research institution. But for GW alums who want to be entrepreneurs, what better place for them to start and grow their company than Washington, D.C.? So we've got a great team at my office, which we say for short, DEMPED, including Sabangle Cook, who's standing there taking photos. She's like a proud mom sometimes when I'm up here speaking. Katie Littman, Joy James, and Jen Castor, who worked to put this agreement together with the Golden Triangle bid to make sure that we can really launch this Penn West Equity and Innovation District today. So you're all here to be part of it, and we want you to be here for the long haul as well. So we've got incentives for businesses at their very start and businesses that are more established. And you could find all of those incentives, all of those programs at one website. Ready to take this down? So it's obviously.dc.com. Leona was mouthing it to me. But obviously.dc.com is where you can find all of our incentive programs. And what we really want this Penn West district to be about, and when you think about Penn West, is it a place, is it a building like the one we're in today? What we think it's about is people and companies. So what we want to do is figure out how we support folks like Jimena, who has Build Within, which starts apprenticeships for tech companies to make sure that DC residents can actually participate in what will go on here in the Innovation District. We want to support folks like Byron at Opportunity at Work, which is disrupting how people get hired, even in complicated settings like a government. They're working with the state of Maryland to make sure that individuals who may not need a college degree for certain jobs can actually get hired into those jobs in state government. It's also about Aya, who's here, she is a GW student. She is focusing on a concentration in entrepreneurship, and she's got a media company where she has content providers from around the country, making sure that she can launch her company this summer right here in DC. So that's what this is all about. This isn't about the buildings and the place, although those are very important. It's about the people and the companies that you'll do, and there's no better place to do it. If you think about it, we're just a few blocks from the White House. We always hate in DC when people say we're a few blocks from the White House about everything in Washington, DC, but we'll take it for this reason. So we're a few blocks from the White House. We're stone's throw away from the World Bank. We're 900 feet away from the International Monetary Fund. So if you're going to start and you want to operate locally, but then also have an opportunity to show what you've got on a national stage, there's no better place to do it than in Penn West. So are you excited about what we're launching today? All right, good. Well, we're excited to have you as part of it. Again, I want to invest in you as well. So I've got $2 million that we're going to sign over to Leona right now, but we're not done, right? You could clap for that, and Leona can come up. And actually, President Wright, why don't you stand with us, and Tian, come on up too and witness this. But really, what we want to do is make sure we've got a lot of programs, like our Small Medium Growth Business Fund, that actually will invest up to $150,000 into companies so that they can make capital improvements or capital purchases in their companies. We've also got the Vitality Fund. I've got $10 million that we need to deploy right away in order to get more companies. Now, your head count has to be 25 or over, but we're looking to deploy that to get companies to land right here in the Innovation District. So there's a lot of opportunity. Obviously.dc.com, that's where you got to go. So with that, we're going to sign some paperwork. Normally, we would do this probably in our offices. We'd probably e-sign them, but Leona, I'm going to do one first, and we've even got ceremonial pens. This is great. So with that, we're now launching the Penn West Equity and Innovation District. Wow. And I know he's taking a picture, but Jim, come on up here. You got to get a pen.
Yeah, have a pen.
Great. Thank you, guys. Can we get a picture right here?
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Great.
Wow.
Thank
What
you.
a great surprise.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everybody. Thanks for also letting us take those photos. And I hope while we were taking those photos, you went to the website, which is... Thank you. All right, guys. Have a great day.
Wow. Woo. What a surprise. I'm surprised by the deal you guys signed. Congratulations. I didn't know you had so much money to dole out. So this is great. I guess we know where to find you now, John. Thank you. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up Daryl Barros, who's a shareholder with Shulman Rogers. Daryl will introduce our first 4 presenting companies. We're going to go in a rocket pitch, 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes per. To the presenters, our AV tech in the back, if you want to progress your slides, just say next slide or just point at them and we'll go from there. We have a confidence monitor up here. But Daryl is a shareholder with Shulman Rogers. He's also a venture capitalist. Spends about 1/4 of his time doing VC and investments. He's with SCI Ventures, which is a family office portfolio of investments. And also he has, in his legal career of over 30 years, he has worked with hundreds of companies and he's helped start, he sat on 30 boards and has started dozens of companies. So we're really thrilled to have you and thank you for your support, Daryl. Go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Jen. I want to thank you and your team. This is my first time at this event. That was very cool what you guys just did, by the way. I'm with Next. Next is an innovative new model for delivery of legal services from launch through each stage of growth. Next offers predictable and reasonable legal fees through fixed price packages. And you tend to work with people like myself who are not only attorneys, but have been in business and run funds. Tian said, keep this moving, so let me just jump to the company. We can be reached at or found at www.next.law. First company that I have the honor to introduce is Wright. Wright is a cloud-based B2B SaaS immersive learning and simulation product built for today's modern workforce and focused in healthcare and contact center markets. Please welcome Rob Wright.
Hope I did a good job. We actually, last time I was here, I'm Rob Wright, I'm the CEO and founder of Wright. We met Next, we're a customer of theirs, they've been great, so I'll do some extra marketing for them. The last time I was here was 2 years ago when I started this company. I had $0 in revenue, a couple pilots signed, and now 2 years later, I'm here in the middle of a seed round. We just recently hit $1 million in ARR. We're gonna close the year out, thank you. We're going to close the year out at $2.5 million in revenue. So we're an immersive learning company in search of a seed round. So we're raising a little over $2 million, and I'm looking for angels and VCs today who want to help us get there. If you want to go to the next slide. I know the problem that we're trying to solve well because I was previously the head of global learning strategy for Marriott. So I oversaw training for the Marriott Bonvoy loyalty program, sales, marketing, call centers. My team trained 1 million people a year in over 100 countries, always at least 8 languages. And I started this company to try to do what I wish we could have done when I was in that role. And these numbers are really sad and scary. There's a gorilla in the room. I'm guessing there might be some investors who are even a little bit allergic to the training space. This is why you're allergic. Between Corporate Executive Board and McKinsey, they say in corporate America about 50 to 80% of the training programs never make a difference. There's an HBR article that says about the same. They interviewed 1,500 business managers. 75% of business managers aren't happy with their learning programs. When you get under it, it's because they can't prove it makes a difference. This is like ridiculously sad. And the way that most people react is incremental improvements. I think what Wright is trying to do is dismantle the whole function and rebuild it in a provocative way. So when I introduce Wright, I do it partly as tech, and you can go to the next slide, but also as operating model, as a way to run the shop in a more modern way. So this is cloud-based. The immersive learning is conversation simulation, could be audio, video, virtual reality-based. There is a software simulation component to this. Our customers have simulated Oracle, Epic, ServiceNow, a bunch of other systems. And there's either human or AI-based coaching. We've got natural language processing woven into that process. This is been most successful, if you want to go to the next slide, in the healthcare and the contact center spaces. So when I was here last, we had a couple pilots. 100% of our pilots have converted, and all of our customers, minus a couple, have expanded at least once with us. And so we're in a place where we're seeing somewhere between 15K and 400K in ARR. And we've got about another $1 million in advisory revenue of some kind that's getting layered in because these companies want to dramatically leapfrog the whole operation. And I think what we're realizing is they don't just want tech, they want someone to guide them into the future of learning. We're definitely doing that. So as I'm doing the raise, if you want to go to the next slide, man, I have a freaking awesome group of people who have been coming along. I've been recruiting in parallel because I didn't want to raise money and then now I'm off looking for people. So I have a group of people, in addition to the folks I have waiting to start, deep in the contact center space. I'm stealing some amazing people from another immersive learning company a few series ahead of us who shall remain nameless. But we've got deep expertise of people who have lived this in the journey. Tyler, engineer, has worked for a couple YC startups. So freaking amazing team to keep this momentum going. If you want to go to the next slide, this is a giant market. If you're allergic to training, it's because you're used to seeing some of the types of companies I talked about earlier. 83 billion is, I think, low. We're actually selling into the C-suite. We don't sell to HR, we don't sell to learning. We go to ops leaders who own the P&L statement. And it unlocks a whole bunch more dollars if you have a business case that is not reflected in the numbers that are normally talked about in the training world. I think the numbers double that. You be the judge. But it's a massive market that we're chasing, and that's just the US. So this freaking works. If you want to go to the next slide, every single customer, when we start to talk about immersive learning, is different. They're like, sounds great, but I'm not sure if I believe you. So people do A/B tests. Every A/B test comes through the way the research says it was and the way that my slide tells you. They spend less time training. They usually cut onboarding in half. Agents or associates or whoever it may be hit their performance goals sooner. Sales closure, NPS. At Inova right up the street, it was patient satisfaction scores. This really, really works. And if you go to the last slide, I need your money to make it work at a much larger scale. So we're in a $10 million post-money round, 600K committed. Angels, welcome. If there's somebody who wants to write me one check, Deputy Mayor, if you want to write one check to get us there, we'd be very happy to talk with you about it. I'm Rob Wright from Wright. Can't wait to talk to you after the event.
The next company I'd like to introduce is Campango, and that's a talent acquisition platform that is transforming the way retail and restaurant employees identify and hire the great talent. Please welcome Stefan Midford.
Well, good morning. I am really excited to introduce you to Campango this morning, where we're reimagining how you recruit and hire hourly labor for retail and restaurants. Next slide, please. We all see this every day. As you walk down the street, go outside, walk down the street, how many help wanted signs do you see? The retail industry and the restaurant industry, next slide, please, are struggling to find that hourly labor. And when we looked at this problem, my prior company was dealing with retailers and retail organizations, and they said to us, you know what? Your software helps us in managing our retail organization, but we can't find workers. And so we wanted to look at this differently and understand, why is this such a problem? And it was a problem before COVID. COVID made it worse, and it's going to be a problem for years in the future. Next slide, please. So we took a look really hard at the experience, especially for that hourly labor. If you're an employee who's looking for a server job or looking for that back of house job or a retail cashier job, the platforms that they use today are not built for helping them find the best opportunity. So we looked at it and said, they live on their phones. Make it a social app. Make it like a dating app. Make it easy to get through. Don't make them go to a website, upload a bunch of questions and forms, and particularly a resume. For retail and restaurants, a lot of the people, that's their first job. And a resume is a huge barrier. So in Campango, what you do, go to the app, answer a few questions that are specific to the industry, press a button, we'll generate your resume for you. But more importantly, we'll score what we call your powers and passions and match you to a job. So you can go from download to answering questions to finding work opportunities in about 4 minutes. Next slide, please. Now, we also talked to employers, and employers said they were frustrated. They couldn't find the right talent with the right skill sets. And so we used the powers and passions, those questions that we asked the job seekers, to better score and match them. So now at retail, I can differentiate between somebody who loves electronics and wants a full-time job and match them up to Best Buy from somebody who loves gardening, wants to do a few hours of work on the weekend and put them in the garden center at Home Depot. So we can do those kind of things to help that employer find better staff. But more importantly, if you get the right staff and match them, they'll stay longer, they'll do better with your customers and generate more revenue for you. Next slide, please. It's a huge market. In the US alone, 27 million workers who are going to turn over at 60 to 70% annually. And $11 billion is spent annually finding these workers. Next slide. Now we know there's competition out there, but we looked at the competition really closely when we started this company. And what we discovered was the competition was all fighting an advertising war. And we think that's important. You have to have voice. But more importantly, you have to change the process. Make it better for the employer. Make it better for that job seeker. Help them find their first job. Next slide. So what have we done so far? We've worked in our beta test with over 200 employers. We've had over 500 recruiters in our platform. We've had over 10,000 jobs loaded up, and 60,000 workers have downloaded our platform to look for work. Importantly, over 33,000 times, we've connected employers and job seekers to help them find that next opportunity. Next slide. In any company of this size, we know that you have a jockey and a horse, and you have to decide how you want to invest your time, especially as an angel investor. So I'm proud to say I've had the very lucky experience of working with 2 companies that did IPOs, and worked with my last company where we founded it, grew it, and sold it in 2019, and it was special in retail execution. So we had lots of relationships in that industry, and that's how we spun off Capango, because we knew there was a problem. Next slide. So far we've raised over $2.6 million as we've gone through and built Capango and built the platform that we're doing and working with the employers. Today, we're here in our last convertible note seed round. It's a $1 million note. We've already had half of it either funded or committed. So today we've got about 450,000 in that note, and then we'll be going on to our next round, the A round, early next year. We hope you'll participate with us. We certainly know that this will help the workers in the city and across the country find their next opportunity. Next slide. Thank you very much. I hope to see you at the table.
Thank you, Stefan. The next company I'd like to introduce is Capital Provisions. Capital Provisions proposes establishing a nationwide tech-enabled roll-up of vending operators. Please welcome Michael Lovett.
Hey, we're here with a whole bunch of companies that are doing some amazing and incredible things. What I'm here to talk to you about is, I think, amazing too, but it might be just a little bit more down home. So let me hear like a show of hands. How many of you have purchased something from a vending machine in the last year? Okay, most of you, right? So those are just a few of the $25 billion that have flown through vending machines in the US alone in the last year. Capital Provisions is rolling up the vending market in Southern California. The market in the US is completely fractured. There's something like 8,000 operators. They're all small, inefficient, a lot of mom and pops. They're only managing about 5% net margins because of it. But the economics at scale are really good, and so there's consolidation going on in our industry, mostly at the top end. So we're focused on packaging up small operators, implementing technologies, bringing them online, implementing good business practice to increase revenues and margins to sell them to the big guys. Our team has built a $2 million platform from scratch in the past year. We use innovative SaaS, IoT, and payments technologies to increase sales and profits. We know dozens of companies that want to sell to us in Southern California, and that's why we're there. Our team has helped build hundreds of vending operators across the country over the past decade. And most importantly, this is the second roll-up for this team. The first one is on the East Coast from Connecticut to Baltimore. It's doing about $39 million in revenue at this time. So what's vending? Last slide. Vending is sort of a catch-all term we talk about when we talk about workplace break room food service. It's pretty simple, really. We're feeding people in the break room. Everything from snacks, drinks, coffee, to breakfast and lunch. In fact, the biggest opportunity in front of us is to convert vending accounts that we buy into much more profitable markets in the break room where we can actually sell food to people they want to eat. The market's enormous. In Southern California alone, the people who work there spend $35 billion on food and beverage during the workday. That's like $12 per person per day. Just think about the amount of money that you're going to spend for lunch today. The opportunity is that our industry only gets about $1.8 billion of that. The rest of the spend walks out the door and drives down the street to the local deli. The primary driver for growth for capital provisions will be through acquisitions and consolidation. In Southern California, about half the market is controlled by the largest 5 operators. The remaining part of the market, around $800 million, is operated by small operators, and those are the ones that we're after buying. So here's where we are today. In the last year, we've made 8 small acquisitions and built a $2.2 million operating platform. We operate 650 sale points in 300 accounts in 4 cities in Southern California. As we exited the integration phase at the end of 2021, by implementing operational improvements, we increased revenues by 50% in Q1 of 2022. Our Series B is planned for later this year. We're talking to a number of private equity firms that are interested in putting in about $30 million to accelerate growth. We will execute $56 million worth of acquisitions. Those are companies we're already talking to. We plan to sell that to a larger player in 1 to 2 years at an industry comp of 10 times EBITDA, or about $100 million purchase price. We kicked off capital provisions with $2.2 million worth of founder capital to establish the company and build it to where it is today. We're raising up to $3.5 million in a senior secured convertible note to accelerate into the Series B. We, as founders, put in $400,000 to kick off the round, and we invite you to join us into the convertible note, which will convert into the Series B at a 20% discount. We plan to exit to one of these players. Our industry is already consolidating, but they can't really play in the smaller end. So again, we're focused on rolling up the small guys and creating a good quality asset for them to buy. Our team believes that we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to roll up and clean up one of the remaining bastions of the way it used to be done. The market is huge. We're already started. We have an unparalleled understanding of how to use technology to solve the problem. We have an active pipeline of buyers and sellers, and we've done it before. Thank you very much. We'll be in the back for questions.
And the next company I'd like to introduce is Cytomine. Cytomine uses immune system molecules to create a safer, more effective combination therapies to treat solid tumor cancers. I hope I'm getting this right. Their innovative platform delivers a combination of drugs in a unique manner that would not otherwise be possible. Please welcome David Orr.
That was an impressive introduction. You got the name right, which almost nobody does, so kudos and thank you very much for that. Cytomine is an oncology company. We have pioneered the use of cytokines, which are an immune system molecule for the treatment of solid tumor cancers. Next slide. The problem with treating solid tumor cancers is threefold. One, the therapies that we treat cancer with are really toxic. That makes it hard to give them in high doses. It makes them nearly impossible to give in combinations, and we know combinations are ultimately the way we're going to start to cure cancers. The other issue is that the tumors themselves are nearly impenetrable. It's very, very difficult to get therapy into the tumor. And so you can't give a lot of therapy without hurting the person, but you can't get a lot of therapy into the tumor either. And then cancers, by their very nature, are highly immunosuppressive. Next slide. So what we've done is we've come up with a single solution to address those 3 problems. We call it a pan-solid tumor solution because it will work in nearly any solid tumor. And they're cytokine-powered nanoparticles. So we have cytokines that are able to literally crack open tumors so that you can get therapy into them. They also stimulate a massive immune response to kill the cancer, and they work in combinations because they're part of a complex immune system. And then you've got nanoparticles that are able to deliver drugs safely to tumors in very high doses, and you're also able to do cytokines, biologics, small molecules, any therapy you can imagine in combination, all in one package. Next slide. So what we've done is we've taken those 2 things, the cytokines and the nanoparticles, we put them together, and we made a single therapy. Now, the market for this therapy is huge. right? There's 1 million advanced cancers in the United States every year. There's about a $400 billion market projected in therapeutic revenues by 2027. Next slide. So where are we? It's a very competitive space because cytokines are really exciting. We're tracking over 22 companies in the space. The thing about all these companies, they're all looking at single therapy solutions, so single agents. They're just trying to make them safe. Most of them are early stage, and most of them are untested new technologies. We have all the patents and everything that we need. Not only that, we've done a phase 1 where we were able to give 4 times more than anybody's ever given of a really toxic cytokine, and we gave it safely. We know that we can target tumors both from our preclinical work and from our clinical work, and unlike anybody else, we're designing things optimized and designed from the ground up to do combination therapies, which is how we're going to ultimately cure cancer. Next slide. So it's been a long journey. We've created a layered patent strategy. We've got all the regulatory strategies in place. We've been partnering with the NIST, with the NCI, with the FDA, with the NCL for years. And we've got lots of publications out there. Other people have proven that our stuff works, not just us. We've got a robust pipeline that includes immunotherapies, that includes chemotherapies and precision drugs, all delivered on this platform, and we've already done a phase 1. The NCI likes our technology so much they've offered to fund and run our phase 2 in 3 different orphan cancers. Next slide. So the team that we assembled to put all this together, our CSO, who's the founder of the company, has over 20 plus years developing clinical stage nanomedicines. The team as a whole has over 100 plus years in combined experience working in the biopharma and the pharma industry at both the small level and the big level. Next slide. In terms of biotech, you don't generally get revenue, you exit early. And so the exits for us are either IPOs or sales, hopefully for many tens of billions of dollars. And our first opportunity for that is going to be sometime in the 2024 to 25 timeframe. Within that timeframe, we expect to have our initial phase 2 data starting to come out of the NCI. And by 2026-27, we believe that we're going to have our phase 1 of our second asset, which is going to be a multi-therapy asset, as well as our phase 2 data from the NCI ready to go. Next slide. So right now, at this point, we've actually gotten about $30 million of investments, both from direct investment and sales of equity, as well as from grants and also from in-kind contributions from federal agencies. And we're raising right now $10 million, and that's going to go to cover drug manufacturing for those trials that the NCI is going to do, clinical activities for our next set of drugs, and then partnering activities, because we can take any therapy that any pharmaceutical company has that's too toxic, can't get it into the tumor, and we can get it into the tumor for them. So we think there's a lot of partnering opportunity here as we prove our proof of concept. Next slide. That's it. I'd love to talk more about the table over here. I'll be waiting, and hopefully some people have some questions, and we can chat. Right, thank you. There you go.
Thank you, David. And yeah, David brings up a good point. So all of our presenters have tables back there. So for those of you who came late, you can, we have the place till noon. So we have a panel after our final presenter, and then you guys can go in the back and network. I'd like to bring up my good friend, Andy Tucker, who will introduce our next 3 presenters. Andy is a tremendous guy. He's been doing M&A law and corporate law for a long time. He's one of the top attorneys, corporate attorneys in the DC region, and he's a longtime supporter of CONNECTpreneur. We're really grateful for your help. Thank you so much.
Yep. I'm partnered with Nelson Mullins. It's a law firm headquartered in the Southeast. We are typically one of the top 2 firms every quarter in number of emerging company venture capital deals in the Southeast. We now have approximately 850 lawyers in 31 offices around the United States. So we are a firm large enough to grow with you to your end stage and exit, and small enough to still work with you and provide the services at the early stage of these companies. I personally have done well over 100 venture capital deals, and I think I will close my 100th IPO if the market holds up at some point in June. It's a pleasure to be here. We're the silent partner, I guess, of CONNECTpreneur on this particular panel. So we're pleased to be here. And my first company to introduce is Everix. I'm pleased to introduce Human Banai. I met Human at, I guess, CONNECTpreneur about 2 years ago. It might have been one of the last in-person events. He's here from Orlando, Florida. They manufacture ultra-thin optical fibers to improve the efficiency and the size of wearables and other technology products. Human?
All right, good morning, everyone. Did you know that a lot of light is being filtered today right around us across the world? For example, PCR machines that we're all now very familiar with thanks to COVID, they use a handful of optical filters to filter small portions of the light spectrum. Every node in the optical fiber network actually uses a piece of optical filter. Another example, let's say autonomous cars. You know, the sensors for autonomous cars, they can't even function without an optical filter. And this list goes on and on and on. Examples are really numerous. And did you know that a lot of light could have been filtered and should have been filtered, and it's not? For example, people who get migraine headache, 85% of them could get less migraine headache attacks if we were selectively filtering the light that makes it into their eyes. And again, the list of things that could have been done if the proper optical filter solution was out there is very long too. Now, so the industry has a number of problems. As I mentioned, you know, the filter, the high performance filter is like what you can see on the screen. You know, we cut out a very small portion of the light spectrum and we let the rest of it through. And what you see on the screen on the top is a piece of our product. It's a nano-layer material that has about 1,000 sub-layers, 1,000 nano-layers, collectively creating that high-performance optical filtering. So let's go to the next slide to see what the problem is in this industry. The traditional filters, because of the way they're made, they're actually too bulky, they are too heavy, and they're too simple in their form factor. And oftentimes, they're actually way too expensive for a lot of the applications that we mentioned. Imagine a next generation smartwatch. Actually, in 2 presentations down, we'll talk about a medical smartwatch with 7 pieces of really bulky, heavy filters, like what you see on the screen there, $1,000 per square inch for the filter alone. So that's just impossible. That's why we exist. Like, next slide. We come into this industry, we bring in a completely novel manufacturing process that makes by far the most compact, 20 times more compact filters than our competition. We're the only ones offering these high performance, very complex materials in the flexible and rigid form factor. A lot of technical and economic benefits there. And as a cherry on the top, we're about 30 times more economic at really high scale compared to our competition. And it's all because of our manufacturing process that is heavily patented, 34 patents, 9 of them already issued, the rest in the process. And next slide. So as a company with a fully validated technology and a lot of paying early adopter customers, about $1 million of actual product sales, and really solid partnerships on the marketing and channel side, we've already sold to a lot of customers, including a lot of the names that you see on the screen. And now we're at that phase of transitioning from early stage prototyping to medium volume and high volume production. And that's why we're raising funds today to scale the company to that stage by strengthening our sales organization and also certifying our operation for scaling. And our market segments, our target segments will be life science, AR, VR headsets, and LiDAR sensors for autonomy. Next slide. So we see the potential to create a lot of money, you know, up to about $85 million of revenue in 4 years. And at that point, we'll be, based on the market comps, we will definitely be a unicorn status company. And really healthy margins. Next slide. We've got a team that has delivered both technically and commercially so far, and we're expanding the team with the funds that we're raising. Next. We have a lot of advisors and board members that have raised hundreds of millions in funds, and they've had, you know, multiple exits. Next. And we've raised more than $6 million so far, including $700,000 that I've personally put in this. And now we're raising $2.5 million. So if anybody is interested in investing or joining our team, I have one of those little tables back there. Everix Optical Filters. Thank you very much.
Hey, to the people in the back of the room, we can actually hear all your conversations up here. So the companies are having a little bit of hard time reaching the investors. And so if the people in the back could just be a little bit quieter or maybe move further back in the room so that the companies can make their presentations. That would be great. Next, I'd like to bring up Givio. The CEO is Gary Carr. Givio is transforming the donating industry by focusing on the donor and integrating the donation experience into everyday banking. Gary? Oh, there you go.
Good morning. So Giveo is making charitable giving a part of our everyday banking experiences. Slide. Why? Millions of people are giving up on giving. It's because the charitable giving experience has not kept pace with the consumer experiences and innovations that we enjoy and see every day in our lives. For example, millennials and Gen Zs are being ignored. You've seen this, I'm sure. We're all givers. Long forms to fill out, out-of-date payment methods, no privacy, bad UIs when they do involve technology. It's just wrong. Slide. So Giveo starts by going where the giver is. We go where we are, where we're managing our finances. We're using online banking, we're using online bill pay services, we're on our phones, we're at work. We're doing all of this to make our lives easier. So we need to make giving easier. More than just a mobile app, Giveo is integrating with digital banking platforms so that we can make charitable giving part of our everyday giving experience and banking experiences. 70% of us already use online or mobile banking. 60% of us are already paying our bills online. Next slide, please. So the market is big. The market is really big. Last year, in the US alone, individuals gave $330 billion to charity. Our solution addresses 2/3 of this market. Next slide. Giveo's different. Yes, there is a fractured marketplace of software providers that are designed for companies that want something from us, right? For example, the nonprofit organizations, they want our money. Okay. Facebook, Amazon, they offer charitable giving. What do they want? They want our data. Big corporations, they want to claim our social impact. So Giveo is different. We have two competitive advantages. Number one, we're designed for the donor. We put the needs of the donors first. And then secondly, we're accessing the market by integrating with financial service organizations, with banks, with credit unions. Not only does this speed access to market, but it delivers the giving experience through parties and relationships that we already trust. Next slide. The first digital partner that we worked with is Q2, publicly traded company. Q2 has 450 banks. We have just booked number 14. Those 14 banks access over 800,000 account holders. The first 3 of these have just launched within the last few weeks. We also are happy to say that we just signed our most notable and largest client, American Airlines Federal Employee Credit Union. They have over 300,000 members. Next slide. Our team is experienced. We have 3 prior successful exits in this same space. Our platforms that we have built have raised money, hundreds of millions of dollars for charities across the country. Next slide. So Giveo makes its money by taking 4% on the donation transaction. We process the donations all the way through to the charities. The average bank that we are booking will generate a minimum of $15,000 a year in ARR from the consumer transactions that are being processed through their bank. We're projecting accelerated growth over the next couple of years, 18 months to 2 years, to put us in a position for a Series A round. And our ambition is to be a $100 million company in the next 5 years. Next slide. To date, we've raised $850,000. This is from founders and from 3 angel investors, 2 of which are Virginia Innovation Partners and Tacoma Venture Fund. So we're looking to raise another $1 million. We need this to sustain operations, grow, attract new clients, speed up the acquisition of new partners, and advance our technology. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate you listening to me. And if the deputy mayor is still here, imagine Giveo with banking helping to drive more capital to the nonprofit sector that the DC citizens need to support. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Okay, the last company that I'll be introducing today is MedWatch Technologies. MedWatch Technologies is a medical device manufacturer for glucose monitoring. I think probably everybody in this room knows about at least 2 or 3 relatives who are diabetic or on borderline and need this product. And I'd like to introduce Mike Moore, who's joined us from I don't know, somewhere.
Hi, thank you, Andy. I'm joining from Las Vegas today. So anyways, diabetes is a global pandemic. I'm sure many of you know a diabetic. 1 in 9 people globally suffer from diabetes. That's over 500 million people. You thought the COVID pandemic was bad? 6 million deaths in 2 years? Diabetes kills 7 million people a year, 1 every 5 seconds. Our medical device, it can monitor your glucose every 5 minutes. It should be the first with FDA certification this year on hypertension technology. And in 14 months, we should be the first watch anywhere on the planet with FDA certification for non-invasive continuous glucose monitoring of diabetes. Diabetes is very painful. I'm sure there's some diabetics here in the crowd. You don't have to raise your hands if you don't want to, but pricking your finger is painful. Diabetics have to do that up to 4 times a day. If they're worst case, they have to do it more. There's other solutions such as Freestyle Libre or Dexcom G6. It's the interstitial patch you see people wearing on their arm, the abdomen, or other places on the body. That can lead to bleeding, bruising. That's a game changer from pricking your finger every day, but it's still a painful solution. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we'll be the first to non-invasively do it. Next slide, please. I kind of jumped ahead. It's easy as wearing a watch because it is. We've also got a healthcare SaaS platform that is really providing a lot of actionable data. One of the big things with diabetics is if you don't have access to good data, how are you going to control it? If you can read it, you can control it. And through our platform, we give you access to that data. No more painful sticks, et cetera. Next slide, please. 537 million people, 500 million people globally, as I mentioned. We intend to change the lives of millions, tens of millions of people. Next slide. All right, we have multiple patents filed. We've got other patents that we've licensed. Again, to recap, FDA certification approximately 14 months. We've actually already got millions of data points. When you look at other interstitial devices, such as the G6, it reads every 5 minutes. That's 288 times a day. We've already got millions of data points, which we're using to train our artificial neural network to give you actionable data. Next slide, please. We've got a world-class team. Bruce Matichuk, he's completing his doctorate this year and another master's as well. He's a machine learning artificial intelligence expert, over 30 years experience. He actually developed the technology that we license for our hypertension technology. Dr. Kevin Kapoff, he's a United States Navy captain in reserves. He's also the chief medical officer with the FBI here in Washington, D.C. He and our director of research, Dr. Jared Jones, they oversaw Dexcom G6 clinical trial on behalf of Optum. So we've got a great experience in this sector. Dr. Geraldine Conliffe-Conlon, she is our chief medical officer for Europe and MENA, Middle East, North Africa. And Mark Colvin, he's our CFO, public CFO experience. He's also a professor of economics in San Diego. I could go into more of the team, but you see collectively we've got 10 exits, 26 acquisitions, 8 spinoffs, and raised $3 to $4 billion. Next slide, please. Our revenue will come from several different areas. Our watch sales and our SaaS platform will have online subscriptions to the medical platform, as well as our actionable data. $3 to $400 million of EBITDA on revenue approaching $700 million in 5 years, and that's super conservative. Next slide, please. All right, we're seeking $3 million. Please come see me at our table. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mike. And then I owe Andy an apology because he is not in the program book, but the good news is you'll all be getting an email with the electronic program book, which will have Andy's bio and information on Nelson Mullins. So thank you so much, Andy. Now I'd like to bring up Will Choi, who's an assurance partner at DHG. I almost said your former employer. But Will, over 20 years of experience in accounting. He's worked for some major accounting firms. He's joined DHG about a year ago, and he serves public and private companies in the technology, life sciences, and government contracting sectors. And Will, thank you so much for your support. Come on up, and Will will introduce our next 3 presenters, after which we will bring up the dean and our VC panel. So, Will, thank you.
Just want to say quickly, Tien, this will be the last event that DHG is actually sponsoring with CONNECTpreneur. We are actually merging with another accounting firm effective June 1st. Will be called Forvis. We'll be creating a national footprint with the merger. So happy to say that this will be the last DHG CONNECTpreneur event, and will be Forvis going forward. Thank you. All right, so the first company I'm presenting is Micronic Technologies. Micronic Technologies is commercializing a patented wastewater concentration technology called the Tornadic One-Pass. It's a pretty cool name. So with that, I'll introduce Karen Sorber, CEO and founder.
So being a diabetic, I hope that you license your technology to the iWatch, because that's what I would use. So, we clean wastewater, the dirtiest water on earth, literally. Why? That means slide. Because we believe that water is a basic human need. It is. Yet 94% of the industrial wastewater in this country is not reused. That's got to stop. And industry is looking for solutions. The Tornadic One-Pass is a revolutionary technology developed by Micronic Technologies that can clean any wastewater. Better than the competition, cheaper. The Tornadic One-Pass uses the power, the pressure, and the vacuums of a tornado to aerosolize the water and remove those toxic chemicals. They're in every water that you can come close to. We do it without filters, membranes, or chemicals. We get 99% of the contaminants or more out of the water, and we get 95% throughput. So you get mostly clean water out. You get You get mostly clean water out in a small concentrated brine that can be resource recovered. So our markets, wherever there's water, there's wastewater. Wherever there's wastewater, we can clean it. But our first go-to markets are cheese and landfill leachate. Cheese has a high total dissolved solids, and leachate has the nastiest water on earth. We've got examples at our booth we can show you. So, the competition, it's either classical heat-based evaporators or trucking, either of which were 50 to 70% cheaper. So whether it's economics, environmental, social justice, we can help meet your goals. We have $8 million behind us in development funding. We have collaborated with the research arm of EPA, and they have our new system that you see here installed at their facility in Cincinnati, doing a test and evaluation program for us. Dr. Leland Vane co-authored a peer-reviewed document with us that was published in Desalination Magazine. We're legit. We had $8 million behind us, and we're collaborating with EPA. It doesn't get any better than that. Our team is well credentialed and experienced and have been dedicated to commercialization with our company, a total cumulative of 50 years with the company. There's no stopping them. So, our revenue model. This is an expensive capital investment for anyone to make. But our star CFO, Liz Dorr, who's with me today, fabulous CFO, she's figured out how to use a service model to provide this for customers so they don't have to put out that major capital expense. This is our trajectory. So what do we want to do? We need to finish out a round. We've got 750 into 2.5 million, got a lead investor. We're going to get pilot programs with customers, prove out those markets, and commercialize. I'm Karen Sorber, CEO, co-founder of Micronic Technologies, and it's the next big thing. Thank you.
Okay, our next presenting company is University Startups. University Startups is a EdTech SaaS platform specifically targeting the online education, college, and career readiness programs. With that, I'll introduce Mark Sterin.
Good morning. Last week I was in front of students telling them about a company, and they gave me a rock star microphone. I felt like Bono. So I said, I feel like Bono. I looked out of the crowd. No one knew who I was talking about. So no bad jokes for me. We're here to empower students and life learners to either A, get into college, or B, get a better paying job. Next, I like Karen's point. Let's go look at Jay. She was a high school student from Southeast in Ward 7. She had an interest in social justice, but she didn't know how to get in college. She didn't know how to get an internship. She was lost and getting no support. Next, please. So she entered our platform, and our platform has 3 main components. We have signature courses. We have micro lightning lessons from 60-second TikToks to 30 minutes refreshers. And then we have micro virtual internships. Next, please. So she took our social entrepreneurship course with one of our professors from Georgetown, Stanford D School coach as well. Next slide. And her teammates came up with the most amazing product. They came up with a teddy bear that hold on to when they're anxious. But the clever innovation is they put a QR code on the bottom of the teddy bear that they can flash their mobile device and sends them to a psychologist anytime they want. Right? Learning how to solve problems in her own community. Next slide, please. So she was so excited, she went into the employment program. This is led by another professor, Professor Mike Malloy at Georgetown. Learned how to build a resume, learned how to interview. Next slide. And then she used one of our proprietary tools where she could put in her skills, her interests, her grades. Next. And it connected her to her interest and passion, which was social justice. And it found her a fellowship. So this summer, she's going to be working at Disruptive, earning $1,000, working on, yes, her passion, social justice. But the story doesn't end there. Next. She then went into our college counseling program, learned how to do a college essay, learned about possibilities of going to college, learning the financial assistance that she can get to actually fulfill her dream and go to college. And this fall, we're excited to say she's going to Howard University. So good for Jay. Next. We measure 42 different skills, including optimism, creativity. 75% of our students are more optimistic about life and their future, right? We're really making an impact. Next. Great team. My colleague Tremaine Davis from Howard University is here, Laura Lee from Amazon, William, who led Discovery Channel Sales. I'm National Entrepreneur Educator of the Year, had 5 startups, sold my last startup to a publicly traded company in 2012. I promised my wife no more startups, but of course here I am. But imagine waking up every day knowing you're having an impact. It's awesome. Next. Great advisory board. Melissa Bradley is going to be speaking today. She's on my board, founder of Blue Mercury. Just some amazing folks. Former director of education at Microsoft. Just awesome people. Next. So our strategy. Our strategy is to build clusters in the community. We connect with community colleges, high schools, libraries, universities like Bowie State University, just some great places and businesses. So they're all using the USU platform. Next. Revenue model, it's measured growth. We should do about $500,000 this year from up to 330 last year. It's measured for a very reason. Next. This is how we work. We're very iterative. So for example, Eastern High School, they're telling us their needs and we're building micro lessons to serve their students, to get them into college or better paying jobs. We've partnered with one of the largest healthcare providers in Maryland, and they're telling us what skills, what content they need to get the next level of a diverse and inclusive pipeline into their organization. So we're university startups. We've raised $1 million, led by TEDCO and other accredited investors. We're looking for 500,000 more to continue to gamify and make a great platform for these students and learners. Thanks so much.
Okay, and our final presenting company today is Alexander's Grace, Brad Bergeson. So Alexander's Grace offers a mass-scale solution for the influencer marketing industry. Interesting to hear about this.
Good morning. There's no deck, so you all pay attention to me. So let's talk about influencer marketing. Influencer marketing is the #1 form of marketing in the world, garnering up to a 6x ROI per dollar invested. This industry is booming, billions upon billions year over year, and it has endless potential, right? However, there are massive problems in the space, and we're going to talk about some of them today. My partner and I, Scott Mitchell, created Alexander's Grace. The name is after my 2 kids' middle names. But AG is the first fully automated influencer marketing agency in the world, a truly revolutionary social media platform. One of the biggest problems in this space is that nothing is free. If you're trying to build an influencer marketing business, good luck, because it costs money. You got to have a web store. You got to have calendar linking, auto posting services. You got to have coaching, drop shipping. It all costs money. If you're a brand, you can't even search influencers for free. You have to pay data aggregators hundreds or thousands of dollars a month just to search these influencers. There is no public opt-in platform that exists. There is no automation at scale, and there is no mass scale solution in influencer marketing. Another big problem is that it's a one-to-one model. You have a brand works with the influencer one-to-one. It's impossible for Coca-Cola or any big company to run a campaign today with 100,000 influencers at the same time, and we can. Another big problem is, what are influencers worth? Is Kim Kardashian really worth $1 million a post? No, but she commands $1 million a post because there is no proprietary technologies that gives her an assessed value. What is she really worth a post? We're gonna find out. She's worth more or less, I promise you. But what about the average person? Why does it have to be Kim Kardashian? The average person can be paid to be an influencer on our platform. And we are gonna find out exactly what you are worth, whether you're posting or whether you're doing any other type of innovative influencer marketing campaign. So our technology is a 2-prong approach. We have an influencer trust score, which is a normalized score between 0 and 100. We scrape all your data. We know the followership, we know your engagement, we know sales conversion. We can even identify bots. Who knows what bots are in the social media space? Anyone following Elon Musk and Twitter right now? They claim they had 5% bots. Now they're saying it could be 20% bots or maybe even more. It is a massive problem plaguing. We identify bots. We will not have bots in our influencer marketing campaigns. So the score is able to find out who you are and what your value is. Then we have the ability to aggregate and group these influencers together in buckets to run innovative campaigns at scale. So our MVP is called IFA campaigns. The ability for a brand or an influencer to pay AG to get a micro-targeted group of influencers to follow you on social media. So we took the entire bot industry, fake followers, fake likes, fake comments, fake shares, and we made it real. So you can get our influencers to follow your Instagram or to follow your Twitter. You can eventually get them to pay them to like, to engage in your content on social media. So if you're trying to run for president, you want 1 million Democrats or 1 million Republicans to follow your Twitter, I could do that. Let's say you're a coach, you're trying to build a coaching business on Instagram. You want to get women between 25 and 40 who make over 60K a year, but that's your target market. And you want 500 more women to follow you. I can do that. I can do anything in regards to aggregating and micro-targeting actual customers to follow you on social media. This is the future of social media. So I've already raised, my team and I have raised $500,000. We are raising another $500,000 at a $5 million valuation. If you are interested in working with the sickest dream team in the market, come check out my table. We will be a unicorn, I promise you that. Thank you.
That was great, Brad. Okay, now we have our investor panel. I'd like to invite the dean to come up along with our panelists. We have Dean Anuj Mehrotra, we have Randy Demolkov with Private Access Network, Chris Eng with Sands Capital, Seda Goff with the Veteran Entrepreneur Fund Bravo at PenFed Foundation, and Anna Mason, Managing Partner, Rise of the Rest Seed Fund at Revolution. Come on up, guys, and for you guys back there, come on up and join us. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. I think it's no longer good morning, or is it? Oh, it is good morning. Good morning. I'm Anuj Mehrotra. I'm the Dean of the School of Business at the George Washington University. Thank you, Tian, for inviting me here to host this panel. And I am really delighted to welcome you to this investor panel on latest trends in early stage investing. And based on my brief conversation with our esteemed panelists here, I think we are in for a ride. So we will take questions from the audience later on, but let me warm them up with some few easy questions first, and then we will have those questions. Let me begin with the introductions. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. Randy Demolkov, co-founder and managing director at Private Access Network. Randy, just wave. I think everybody knows you, but still. Chris Eng, principal at Sands Capital. Seda Goff, general partner, Veteran Entrepreneur Fund Bravo. And Anna Mason, managing partner at Rise of the Rest Seed Fund at Revolution. So let me jump right into the first question. With the Ukraine war in progress, we have inflation going on. Let's talk a little bit about the global factors and the macro risks and how they are impacting the startup market. Randy, perhaps we could start with you and Anna after that to try and get to the trends. Please.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
I don't think your mic is working. You may have to turn it on.
Can you hear me? Oh, here we go. Yeah, so we're definitely seeing companies paying attention to the macro factors that are going on in the world. And I would say, describe it as kind of a tale of two cities. You've got companies that are somewhat, severely impacted by what's going on geopolitically around the world. And then you've got companies where it's just business as usual. And fortunately, most of our companies are in the business as usual category. So these are companies that were taking advantage of trends that were already in full swing before the pandemic. So, for some people, work at home is new, but the reality is it's been a 20-year trend. And the companies we've invested in we're looking at these trends well before the pandemic, well before the Ukraine war. So things like, telework and telemedicine and, the subscription services of food to your homes, these are trends that have been going on for many years, and these geopolitical factors that you're talking about have really not interrupted those trends at all. The only thing we've seen is companies are cognizant that it might be more difficult to raise equity to fund their operating losses, and so, just about every board has said to their CEOs, you might want to lose less money next year or even next week.
All right, thank you, Randy. How about you, Anna?
It's a great point. I think this is on. There we go. I would offer a couple follow-up points. One, before we get to the tension of inflationary pressures and how I think that's impacting some in the startup world to the upside, others to the downside. I also think it's important to recognize that it isn't just this groundswell of inflation that's causing a lot of the rumbling in the venture and the tech world, but it's also the fact that the world has opened back up. And for 2 years, a huge part of the bet, not just driving funding, but also driving, the rise in, the NASDAQ and so much of what we were seeing in the public markets was this sense that maybe the elasticity around our ability to live online forever was something that you could actually really fund and pay forward. So you also, I think, see that rubber band snapping. I'll just shout. Impacting a number of companies to the downside. And that's where I think you see some of the layoffs coming from companies like Cameo and others, where they were just really these boomtown pandemic era businesses, and now there's a little bit of a question as to where the dust has settled and what a steady state business like that actually looks like. So that's my first point, is that I think it's not
Testing this, trade me.
all right, let's keep going here. We'll keep rolling the mics. So I think that's the first point I would make. And then with respect to inflation in the tech and the tech and funding market, it's not zero sum. So on the one hand, some of the areas and industries that I've personally been spending some time in, for example, what I think is perhaps a next generation in additive manufacturing, printing. From a Rise the Rest standpoint, we really didn't focus on investing in that space when it seemed to be really driven by consumer preference. Now, something that's of particular interest to me and our team is that perhaps the groundswell of inflationary pressures and also, frankly, just concerns about national security, economic security, and where the opportunities actually are to reshore in various industries is starting to, I think, make it a little bit more interesting, where you have major businesses from a verticalized standpoint across a number of industries who don't necessarily want to raise prices to consumers, but because supply chains are so crunched and disrupted in so many different ways, they want to find new ways, and they are more interested in innovation that could drive that. So there's a lot kind of right under the surface on that side of things.
Great perspective there. And you know, Chris, let me address this question to you. With the recent pullback in public tech businesses, what are you seeing in the early stage VC market?
Yeah, I think this is working.
Even the microphones are pulling back.
I certainly, I think any of us that were investing in last year sort of realized that the market was unsustainable, whether it was public stocks, late stage private, even early stage. The market was just, it was hot, right? It felt frantic. It felt that you were coming at least towards the late stages of a cycle. And certainly in the last 2 quarters, we've seen a pullback in the public market. I think as you've read or have seen, it typically works its way down, right? First, the public markets, which have the most liquidity, have pulled back. I think Q1, you saw a huge pullback in the amount of late-stage funding. Frankly, just a lot of rounds not getting done, or companies that didn't have to raise, holding off and not having to fundraise or opportunistically fundraise. I think increasingly now, even in May and April and going into Q2, you are starting to see it continue to creep down. I think we see it at the sort of Series A and B stage. It's not to say that funding is not getting done. There certainly are, but it takes a lot longer. No longer it's a week from first meeting to a term sheet. It might take actually a couple weeks, and there's quite a bit more diligence going on. There's a lot more rigor around the business model, and frankly, whether the unit economics, in the long term can work out. So there was always a need for a correction, and I think it's starting to play out even on the early stage. At least that's what I'm seeing.
Great. So let me change subjects a bit, because I'm, of course, from GW. In our programs, there are more women than men in most of our graduate programs, for example, or even at the undergraduate level. And I'm particularly looking from their perspective. It's also a very diverse program. We're getting students from all over the country, all over the world. So I want to understand the democratization access to capital. If you're looking at the geography, or if you're looking at the underrepresented minorities or the women. And Seda, perhaps you want to take a shot at this to try and help us understand on what kind of funding may be available and what efforts are being made to make sure that there's democratization to the access.
Yeah, so our fund specifically invests in veteran-owned, veteran-led companies. So when you're talking about democratization, it's the access. We help ensure that access to capital for veterans as they're starting and scaling their businesses. And another specific focus that we have is on women veterans. And we look at this as a big opportunity. So some of the issues right now in investing in general come around having access to capital. So women entrepreneurship, has grown 45% over the last 6 to 10 years. That's 5 times more than the national average. Female veteran entrepreneurship has grown 295% at around 400,000 businesses across the country. And during that period of time, of all the venture capital that's been deployed, less than 2% has gone to women-founded companies. So there's a big gap. There's a big discrepancy. And I think that it's, on the democratization, it's on both sides of the table when it comes to investing. It's on the side of the table that's obviously pitching and, going out for capital at the right time to the right people. But then it's also on the other side on having women in VC that can evaluate these problems and can evaluate these companies to see that, there's an art of the possible for them to be super successful and be able to evaluate, especially in the pre-seed and seed stages when you don't have a lot of the numbers to play with, and a lot more gooey, right? We're evaluating these companies in a very gooey stage. So having people on the other side of the table that understand this. And in terms of what you can do, I mean, there's a lot of macro level stuff that could be done. There's a lot of you could say more VCs should hire women, more VCs should be founded by women. But as entrepreneurs, which I think most of you guys are, if you are a woman entrepreneur, I would say go pitch. Go pitch as often as you can to whomever will listen to you. Because at the end of the day, there's going to get to a point where the people on the other side of the table might not look like you or be like you, but they're going to realize that they're leaving money on the table if they don't get people on the other side of the table that can evaluate your company. So there will be, it will get right-sized over time if you continue to go out and you go pitch and you go talk to investors. They will put other people on the other side of the table. Nobody wants to leave money out there, so.
Well, thank you. Anna, let me follow up on this with you. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of the pandemic on the geography of early stage investing and funding startups outside of Silicon Valley or Boston or New York? What are some of the trends? What are some of the innovations you are seeing in the marketplace?
Yes.
This time your mic will work.
Yes. I'd be happy to. And I actually, before I answer that question, I want to also just very briefly touch on the question about women in entrepreneurship and venture. And I don't think the pandemic did women founders any favors. I think pitching in Zoom boxes made it incredibly challenging. And we were talking about this a little bit yesterday when we were prepping, but anecdotally, I cannot count the number of male founders that I met over Zoom, many of whom were building phenomenal businesses, and we love investing in male founders and women founders. But Zoom background is crumpled up bed sheets, haven't made your bed, it's totally a disaster. And I'm like, what is going on? Not only in that house, but in your business, in your world, the way you present your Zoom background may or may not be a window into not just how you live your life, but how you run your business. And on the flip side, you meet so many women who are incredibly buttoned up. They've got it all, focused and together. And still you saw an even greater disparity in a lot of the progress that had been made the prior year with respect to funding for women. So one of the things, specific tactics that I've been encouraging female founders in my network and in our portfolio to undertake that I just thought I would share with any female founders in the room is this idea or this principle that I call the transitive property of credibility. And it can play out anywhere in life, but I think it plays out particularly well in a Zoom box, where you can basically stage your background to have nonverbal signals that illustrate a lot of the success or credibility, whether it's a degree or an award. For better or worse, perhaps most of industries and most of life, but venture in particular, I think it's an industry of believability. Do I fundamentally believe you or not? Do I think this is a problem? Do I think you know what the solution is? Do I think the market is big enough? Do I believe you? And unfortunately, I think women in general in venture and in a lot of industries have a long way to go. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox on that front, and I'll give a shorter answer on the geography front. So as some of you in the room may know, Rise of the Rest, which is the earliest stage fund at Steve Case's Revolution here in Washington, D.C., Rise of the Rest has a mandate to invest broadly in entrepreneurs and startups in cities all across the country, as long as they're not headquartered in New York, Silicon Valley, or Boston. So by extension, we are investing very actively in communities all across the country. We have about 200 investments that span nearly 75% of states in the country today. So this question of place, we literally just came out with an annual report that is titled Place Matters, so you can see where we land on this question. But there actually is, I think, a lot of tension and debate in the venture industry more broadly because so much of it is services driven by definition and by margin profile, that there is this question as to whether or not your headquarters is important. You actually have to have a physical space, or there are better benefits, more benefits to just implementing fully remote. And we've seen it cut both ways in our portfolio. So I call it the unbundling of place. And in in venture and technology, we often look for innovations that either unbundle or rebundle technologies. So I think the value proposition of place has been fundamentally cracked wide open. You don't necessarily have to work where you live. So it's a really interesting question. I'm biased to think that what's happened over the past 2 years inures to the benefit of communities all across the country. And we actually saw that data bear out. We came out with a report called Beyond Silicon Valley with PitchBook a couple months ago that shows that the data at early stage, seed and early stage, venture capital, the percentage of venture capital dollars going to Silicon Valley-based startups fell below 30% for the first time in about 15 years. So it's moving.
Yeah, great. No, you make excellent points there and are very interesting ones. Randy, I want to follow up with you on this. From your standpoint, has COVID impacted the geography of your investments, and how are you doing due diligence on the various investments?
Sure. Well, let me pile on a little bit to what Anna was saying with respect to crumpled bed sheets and things like that, and speak directly to the entrepreneurs in the room. So, you know, as investors, we are struggling to get any discernible data points that we can then extrapolate out into the future and try to evaluate the chance that you're going to succeed and the potential magnitude of that success. So we are looking at anything, so not just a crumpled bed sheet, but a crumpled shirt. Any little data point that we can extrapolate. If you're a minute late for the meeting, we say to ourselves, well, gosh, if the guy was a minute late to 60 meetings, that'd be an hour of wasted time. Multiply that times every day and 10 years, and that's a lot of wasted time. So you have to be cognizant of just how competitive the situation is for money, and that, unfortunately, I mean, literally anything you do, we're putting into a regression equation, extrapolating out 10 years and saying, well, if you did that every day and it was a positive thing, this guy's going to be a real winner and his company's probably going to be on the stock exchange. If he does that negative thing multiple times a day, you know, we don't have a lot of confidence in this person. So whether it's a man, woman, child, you know, whatever it is, you have to know that we're looking at just about anything, because so often your business doesn't have, you know, the years of metrics like a public company that you would ordinarily look at and go, oh, well, sales grew 82% for the last 5 years. We don't care what his bed sheets look like, right? So we don't have that information. So therefore, we're looking for every other possible thing to try to figure out what's going on.
I recently heard a speaker say the average length of a marriage in the United States, I think it's like 9 or 10 years, and the average length of a relationship with a pre-seed investor in a company is 10 to 12. So we're all going to be married longer than most marriages in the United States. So, you know, to your point, we're evaluating everything. Tone, relationship, how you communicate, all the above, because, like, we're going to be around for a day or two, hopefully.
Okay, so I'm going to pile on here a little more too. But I'm actually going to go in the opposite direction, because one of the things, I'll get on like a different soapbox right now, there's a huge power imbalance in the venture industry, that VCs are check writers, entrepreneurs are looking for money. It's not a great dynamic. And I think so many of the entrepreneurs that I've had the privilege to meet over the years are just brilliant experts in their industry. And so I have particular, I think, empathy for the dynamic where you're just this brilliant human that has dedicated your life to jumping off this cliff and solving this problem. Like, entrepreneurship is this call that you have to do it, because if you don't do it, you don't think it'll happen. And that's incredibly inspiring and powerful. And that's so much of why I'm grateful to do the work that we get to do. Like, we're not out on the front line doing the hard work. We're offering, you know, guidance, advice, and perspective based on all that we've seen, and of course, some capital. So the other side of the coin, I'm 100% on everything that we've all set up here. But I think the other side of the coin is also recognizing that as an entrepreneur, there are also moments where you can take specific steps to try to shift power imbalances in meetings. It can be something as simple as, if you pull up your pitch deck, don't start on page 1. Like, flip to the slide 7, because that's where you think you make your strongest point. And there are, I think, lots of other like tips and tricks, but that's also something that we talk to our portfolio companies about as they go out to raise more capital, is that you can run a process in a certain way to shift the power balance and dynamic to your benefit, and I think it's well worth doing.
And I love that trick. And because to me, that signals that whoever's pitching to me knows me, did their homework on me and what I would care about, and knows where to start. So I couldn't agree more.
So I should have talked to you guys much earlier before interviewing some people on Zoom, and if I had known about some of these pointers, I wouldn't, when I met them in person after really being impressed on Zoom, that was a disaster. So I should have picked up on some of these things. But you mentioned something very interesting, where you're talking about the passion, that you have to do it. I get students in my office who are talking about the market right now and the opportunities that they have in the corporate world to be able to accept big dollars. And they are looking at the pullbacks in investments right now in terms of the startups and early stage investing. They are really entrepreneurs at heart. They came to DC, they came to GW for that. And they're looking at, and especially women, who are saying a very small fraction of the people who are, women entrepreneurs are able to get the funding. What kind of advice can I give them? Should they actually take that safe job with a corporate world and they will succeed? Or they should continue with their passion given where we are in the marketplace right now. So whoever wants to take it, you're all probably equally good at that stuff.
Well, I can start on this. I mean, we recommend that everyone do the things that they're most comfortable doing. That, if you want to explore, a different side of life, do it on the weekend, do it as an amateur. But professionally, exist at the intersection of the things you like to do and you're good at doing. Because that's going to be the lowest stress environment for you. So if that's, managing people, then manage people. I have figured out over my career I hate managing people. So I'm, spending...
Try managing faculty, my friend, and then you will know what I mean.
So, I mean, if someone said, Randy, here's $1 billion, but you have to manage people, I would say, no, thank you, because you're going to end up with a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. So that would be the first piece of advice, is spend some time figuring out what you actually love doing and then find a way to do that for money.
And I think for me, vis-a-vis getting into startup world or going the corporate route, my best advice actually sits in the middle, which is go work for a startup. And that's what I think many students don't necessarily realize. And part of that actually is a structural bottleneck, because most of the larger corporations have the capital and the access and frankly the bandwidth to recruit on college campuses, whereas many startups don't. There are actually a handful of really neat startups that have come into the market to solve this problem and fill this void for startups over the last couple of years. But what's core to this idea, and frankly, I think this doesn't just apply to students, but hopefully applies to all of us in some way, you don't have to be a founder to be an entrepreneur. You could be employee number 3, and you are just as entrepreneurial, perhaps if not more, because you're probably also focused on a very specific tactical business function that's critical to the success of the startup. So I do think there's something to be said for gaining the experience, but I think startups by nature and entrepreneurship by nature is not a check-the-box kind of industry.
Yeah,
excellent point. Yeah.
And I think there's something that whether you're a student thinking between going the corporate versus startup route, or if you're an experienced hire, thinking about making the jump into, you have a great idea and you think about, maybe I should pursue this and start a career. I think even before you start thinking about, raising a pre-seed round, or, what the valuation on that round might look like, or what the round size is. There's a lot of I think the most important thing is the pre-work of frankly just talking to people in the industry, right? It could be, people that you might want to bring on as your first, 5 hires or 3 hires. You might want to talk to prospective customers. I think, the companies that we've backed at the earliest stages, which, that I think we've gotten the most conviction around, are the ones that have come and sort of demonstrated to us, hey, we think this idea is really interesting, and don't just take our word for it. We talked to 30 different customers, and hey, here are the first couple hires that we plan on bringing on, and they're already aligned and want to join. And that to me is, I think, really important. It's almost like it's good for the business, right? It helps solidify the business plan, but it's also, frankly, good pre-diligence for your first investors.
Yeah.
And then one other thing that I'll add is, especially when you're at a school like GW or American or Maryland, there are innovation programs. There are even like VC side programs that you can get involved in. You can start businesses while you're still in school. I like seeing that, even if it's not the business that they're pitching me on, that they went through building a business with a lot of high-level mentorship and guidance in the process. Even if that thing didn't work, like, that's a rep. You got a rep under your belt with that level of help and potentially like backing. There's a lot of funds now that focus on, what is it, like dorm room fund, that focus on companies that are coming out of the universities. Like, that's a rep. Like, go in there, it's a little bit less risk, but it's still high risk. I actually taught intro to entrepreneurship at American, and my first question I would always ask the students is, are entrepreneurs made or born? And I have an opinion. There is no right answer, but I have an opinion.
What's your opinion?
I think they're born. You can't help it. Like, even if you're put into like a corporate environment, you kind of become an entrepreneur. Like, you can't help it. If you want to be rich, go get a Jimmy John's franchise. Like, you'll be rich. Like, you'll be good. You want to make $1 million. But it's a lot easier way to make money than being an entrepreneur.
Well, here's a startup idea from me, to have an app to be able to determine whether somebody has a gene for being entrepreneurial or not, based on what you've just told me there. So let me actually follow up on that a little bit. You're talking about the students, you're talking about the venture competition that people have. They start their businesses or ideas while they are in school. How do you keep people in DC? And what are the businesses, what are the ideas that are really thriving? What startups are thriving in DC, bringing it locally here, in your experience so far?
Well, we have about 12.5 companies that we're invested in the DMV area, so no shortage of companies I'm proud and excited to talk about. But I also thought I interpreted your question in two ways. So first, I think on all sides of the spectrum, for example, we are invested in a startup in DC called Maya, which actually, and this is a very, very interesting startup, it masquerades as a brick and mortar lingerie store, actually, for very inclusively sized women. What it actually is an accredited medical supply facility that's leveraged some of the deregulation during the pandemic in the digital health space to be able to provide post-mastectomy prosthetics that are fully insurance reimbursable to women all across the country. And so that to me is something that actually was a business that was built in DC for very specific reasons, but found access points over the last 2 years to be able to actually think bigger about how that could be a venture-backable, venture-scale business. And part of that thinking for that entrepreneur and incredible female founder named Jasmine Jones was to actually leverage community, both hyper-locally through a lot of the tremendous startup support and ESO organizations that exist in the DMV, but also connect the dots nationally with some women-supported organizations. So that's just one example of 12.5, but I think the other question about how the district or the DMV more broadly retains talent, this is a question that persists and sometimes haunts economic developers and organizations in cities all across the country. And I actually think that there are some fascinating and really inspiring examples from many cities across the country and regions. One that actually comes to mind is from the Heartland, straight out of Central Casting in the Heartland in Northwest Arkansas, a town called Bentonville, which for a long time was best known, if it was known at all, as the HQ and the longtime home of Walmart, Fortune 1. And what they've done there is nothing short of extraordinary, in my opinion, which isn't just let's focus on building, developing, harnessing the startup and entrepreneurial community, but they took a more fundamental step back and said, why would people want to live in a place? It's about the arts, it's about the culture, it's about the community, it's about the activity. And let's infuse that with a spirit of possibility and innovation and entrepreneurship. And so there's a very symbiotic relationship between work and life there that I think a lot of other communities could really take a strong page out of that playbook.
Say that, please.
And opportunity. Like, if you come there, there's all those opportunities. So we publish a top cities for veteran entrepreneurs list every year. And we look at those things. We look at, the growing economy in that area, the ability to start a business, veteran resources, and livability, like the parks, these, all those different things that bring people there. For the first time this year, finally, DC is #1. So yay. And it comes to all these resources. So the other thing that I want to say is my journey started in the startup world. I had a tech startup like 10 years ago. We exited fine. Nobody became filthy rich, but check the box. But since I've been here, I'm going to call him out. He's talking to somebody over there. I don't even know if he's noticed me yet. But I used to go to all these events 10 years ago. I used to be part of the scene. And like there's a guy, Max, over there. I don't know if he's talking to somebody. I remember him at these events 10 years ago. And I saw him and I was like, oh, I know that guy. And, I ran into a friend of mine that, Jenny Henson, wherever she is, where, I was like, oh, hey, we were doing these things together. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, let's do this together. And so it's cultivating over the last, decade or so when DC really started coming up as a startup scene and, the events and the people coming together, those connections don't go away even when I've transitioned to another role in this world. So I think DC is pretty awesome in that regard because I feel like I was brought up here. So startup world-wise?
Great. So we will take a few. They are sufficiently warmed up for some questions from the audience, which will floor them. So hopefully, if you want to ask a question, just come by here, and I'll hand you a working mic, and you can ask. But let me engage them to perhaps understand some of the future hot areas for investments that you are seeing, whether it's AI, fintech, biotech, entertainment. What are you seeing in the marketplace, and where do you think it's going to be exciting in the next couple of years?
Sure, I'll give a quick sort of area that I think we're particularly bullish in, and that, AI and machine learning has been certainly one of the bigger buzzwords of general business jargon in the last 10 years. But I think one of the impactful or important sort of trends that will happen within AI is, and particularly as it becomes more pervasive within our everyday life, is regulation of it. I think it's appropriate, and I think it's coming down the line probably in the next 5 years, right? It can have immense consequences on consumers, whether the ability to get a loan or to get a job. And so that's one of the areas we're really interested in is, what are going to be the next generation of startups out there that can ensure that sort of the models that are being used in our everyday life are trustworthy. That's something that we're pretty interested in.
So you mentioned interesting points there about, and when you start looking at these areas, there's regulation, there is biases, there is fairness, there is equity along these things. Any factors that would play a role in what people would be investing in and what startups would be doing?
Yeah, I think my view is it sort of starts too with just general governance, right? There's the quantitative part of it is of how you can define statistical tests to see if something is quote unquote fair or biased, but really it comes down to good governance, right? Have enough people sort of reviewed the model? Has it been signed off by a risk and compliance person, or is a data scientist just building the model and shipping it off live without testing it? So the first part before we even get into very technical ways to automatically identify the trustworthiness of a model is sort of the first steps of, hey, let's make sure we just accurately review and approve it first.
Great. I saw some mic disappear. That means, is there a question here, or am I going to continue here? Tian, you had given a mic away. Maybe it's just giving mics away which are working or not working. I don't know. Please, go ahead, Jim.
I just wanted to follow up on your the comments about regulation and trustworthiness of the different algorithms and things we're using. At GW, I was really happy to hear that, because at GW, that's actually what we're focusing on in a lot of our research. We have a trustworthy AI institute that we're developing. I have a meeting next week with the head of one of our regulatory programs about how we can support startups in the Penn West Innovation District that you just heard about. So really glad to hear that. One thing along these kinds of lines of government, one thing that I'm very interested in is getting the perspective of the panelists on where should researchers and university entrepreneurs, what are some of the biggest challenges that we can bring to help solve those problems from the venture capital perspective? So for example, We have some great AI research. We have great medical research. How do we take that research and apply it to the problems that maybe you guys are seeing that you're interested in funding? Because I would like to be able to direct our researchers and students and also tap into the funding that's now starting to come from the government that's really focused on this, like the Regional Innovation Engine program from the NSF that was recently announced that is encouraging universities and public-private partnerships around developing technologies that will be able to be commercialized. So I want to get your perspectives on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
One other program, so one program that you mentioned NSF. NSF has, for instance, called the iPerf program. iPerf, P-E-R-F, that places PhDs within startups that are in phase 2 SBIR with NSF for up to 2 years. So it's the idea of that whatever research that they were doing to, in their PhD research, putting them into a startup for 2 years and then bringing them back. I just learned about this program.
It's a great program. I was also just going to say tactically, and I'm not sure if the university does anything like this, but I'm a huge fan of the reverse pitch model, which oftentimes is where you have corporations come in if they're willing. It's tricky to cross that chasm. But you start with the problem versus the solution, and then you build a short program or engagement around having the students, or in some cases the startups, hack literally or figuratively.
Hacking for defense is one of those.
Yeah, and so I actually think there's a great opportunity to perhaps do that with some later stage startups instead of corporations. I'd be happy to sync on that after.
Very interesting point. Did you want to say something, Randy?
Yeah, I wanted to say, in my world, I normally see a giant chasm between the academic world and the business world. So, yeah, it's definitely something you want to focus on because we've seen a lot of friction between those ideas percolating out into the market from the universities. I mean, typically there's just not a lot of overlap.
Great. Did you have a question, my friend, here with the mic, or are you just sitting here?
You're in charge of the mic.
Yeah.
You're in charge of the mic. All right.
We got
please,
one right
go ahead.
there.
There's a question right there. Seda, could you repeat the question for the audience on the mic?
So his question, and this is a brief back, so let me know if I got it right, is why veterans? How does that figure into our investment thesis? And then what other services or things that, what are the gaps that could be filled in helping veterans access capital, and then what do we do? Is that right? Okay. So taking a step back, so the Veteran Entrepreneur Fund Bravo is part of the PenFed Foundation. PenFed Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit serving to increase the financial stability of veterans in the military communities. And through the Veteran Entrepreneur Investment Program, we help veterans access capital. And our fund, all of our carry goes, so all of our earnings go back to the foundation to invest in more veterans. So the success of one veteran entrepreneur begets the opportunities for the successes of others. And we see that it has actually been proven, our funds are doing fairly well right now, and I think a lot of that is to the founders. So, what brings people to the military, and then the skill, what inherently brings them to the military, and then the skill sets that they learn while there, and the leadership skills that they learn while there, translate very well into the entrepreneurship community, into starting a business. But that being said, veterans have two major gaps in being successful. One is access to capital, and the other is ecosystems. If you join the military and you have a 4 to 8 year level of service, you didn't go do an internship after college and start kind of collecting your business contacts as you go and your different mentors in the business community. So there's that gap there. And then the access to capital, like I said, and sometimes even the credit side. If you've been deployed, particularly through the last few wars that we've deployed troops in, you may not have been home to even have credit to look at loans and these different types of access to capital. So that's kind of where the barriers are and why we do what we do. And then in addition to our program, into our investment fund, we have a number of different programs. One marquee program that we have is our master's program, which is a fundraising accelerator. We help veteran entrepreneurs go that last 100-yard dash toward their first institutional capital with the through line of getting their data room together, but really it's due diligence boot camp. And then we actually have our next demo day next week for the 10 companies in our cohort. So, we are doing these different programs toward deploying the capital.
So let me ask a different question altogether. Again, I'm looking at it from the university hat here. I believe that all companies and all institutions are finally made of people. So when you're looking to invest, are you looking at the people traits, educational traits, personality traits? What are the factors that stand out that you're looking for?
Sure, I'll address this. So we care extremely little about people's educational background. So that's not one of the factors that we look at and try to extrapolate, because it's not terribly proportional to future success in entrepreneurship. At McKinsey, it probably is. I don't actually know the answer, but in entrepreneurship, it's just not. So we're looking at drastically different factors. A better question is, were you ostracized in high school? That's frankly the kind of things we want to know. Were you voted, class clown? Are you the kind of person who sits in a meeting and you're first to raise your hand and say, why is that? That doesn't really make sense. So there are many, many traits we look for, but, whether you went to, the best school or the worst school really is not one of them, because many people, go to different schools for different circumstances. I would say success at anything is a general criteria, but it absolutely does not have to be academics. If you won a road race or a bike race, or you rebuilt a car and won best of show, that's impressive. That shows your ability to try things, to stick with them, and to win. So we do look at a bunch of things, but it's not educational background really at all.
So some of the other tangibles that we either query specifically or will look for in interactions during our process. So one, I think there are a handful of questions. We actually also ask these in our interview process for folks in our team, and it can be instructive when you chat with founders about them. We ask questions like, what is your superpower? What are you not interested in ever doing ever again in your life for any amount of money or fame or fortune? If you succeed and you build this business in 10, 20, 30 years, what do you want to be known for? Those can be interesting directional indicators. Some of the other things that we do are we try to spend time not just with the founders who, one, we're screening for, are you a great salesperson? Because pitching and fundraising is a core part of what your life is going to be, whether you like it or not. So hopefully you like it or you can fake it. But it's also critically important to weed out what's a sales pitch and what's reality. And oftentimes you can get that from not just co-founders, but other C-suite execs, or sometimes folks in a functional line of business. So it's not just talking to the other people on the team. Sometimes we do that one-on-one. Sometimes we do it in a group dynamic, and we see how the CEO manages that meeting. Like, do you talk for 50 of the 60 minutes and then give your team scraps at the end? Do you interrupt? What is that dynamic like is really helpful. And then we also screen for things, I think I mentioned this before, but it's not just how you make your bed and how you organize your room, but it's how you organize your data room. Like your digital room, that's the window into your corporate life, that's particularly, can be particularly instructive to us as well.
Yeah, lastly, I sort of break it into sort of like three high-level parts. So first one is like we assess the passion of what you're doing. Like as they said,
we did see some of that.
It's a 10-year journey. So I hope you like the company and the industry you're founding, because it's going to be a long time. So passion. I think the second, as Anna mentioned, is sort of ability to recruit. Right. That's going to be one of the most important jobs for the CEO and founder in the initial days. So, do you have? Are you able to sort of express the vision of the company and bring others along on the journey? And then sort of the third, I think, is this interesting balance between having a big vision for what you want for the company, but also having a fairly rational path of how you get there. Right? It's great to have a big vision and a big idea, but there's tactical steps over the next few years that you need to take. And I think having a rational view of how you get there is always helpful.
Let me pile on to one thing that Chris was alluding to, which is credibility of what you say. So sure, you got to be kind of salesy, but you don't want to cross the line into unbelievability at all. And we find that a lot with people. So don't make the mistake of thinking that, you know, if you tell me the most impressive thing you can dream up, that's going to end up with me writing a check. Well, what it's going to end up with is me checking it out, finding out it's false, and never calling you again. So you have to operate in this zone where you're optimistic, but you're credible at the same time. And I think a lot of people kind of, fall into a gap there. You absolutely want everything to be true. And again, you want the things that are projections, they absolutely have to be credible. So we talk to companies sometimes, they go, we're going to grow tenfold in a year. And we say, well, I mean, that's possible. Can you walk us through the details? And a lot of times they say, no, we just thought that was kind of a great aspirational goal. And we would agree, sure, that's a great aspirational goal. But you're not going to get money from us just because you think it would be great if you would grow 10 times in a year. It's just not substantiated at all, and it's really not credible. And so you lose, quote, credibility, and that's the opposite of what you're trying to achieve, of course.
Yeah, Sarah?
The other advice that I try to give entrepreneurs who are going to go pitch VCs and investment funds and stuff like that is learn our business model. Our job is to learn your business model and to understand that you're going in the right direction, but learn ours. We're not doing this out of the kindness of our hearts. I mean, there is that component, because I do really like most of our founders in our portfolios. I love them all. Love them. But because again, we're going to be in this together for a little while. But understand our business model. Understand what we're looking for. Understand, how our decisions are made, so that when you're talking about, if we ask you a question, we're not asking it just because, and say if you're an entrepreneur, I understand your question. This is my answer to it, and this is how my answer relates to you. And if you can do that, you're kind of doing some work for me in connecting dots. Even if it's not perfect, because you don't know everything that, on the back end, on our end, but, understand our business model. There's easy books out there to go read. The first one I kind of point people to is Secrets of Sand Hill Road. That's a good, easy one. It actually walks you through some of the math, too. I'm a math geek, so I like math. But, learn why we would say yes to you and why we would say no. And understand that you need as many of us to say yes in your journey for you to get from point A to point D. So.
Right. So let me just pause on for a second. So definitely tell us what we want to hear. It just better be true. That's it.
So unless there's a question from the audience, I have one. Go ahead.
I got one.
I'll still have one final question. Go ahead.
I'm Joseph Machinsky. I'm actually with Tishman Sparks. So been previously in my prior work life in business development, spent a lot of time in the startup incubator scene at DC, which a lot of former colleagues of mine really feel it's taken a step back to the greatness it once was, like several years ago. So from an investor perspective, what do you think DC needs to be doing differently to kind of rebuild the culture that had previously existed around the various different incubator programs, startup scene? I know events like this obviously are going to be a big part of that, but maybe what can the city do differently? I know John talked about the innovation district that he's working on with Leona and Jim. So, what do you think from an investor perspective the city needs to be focused on to culturally bring that stuff back to really being prevalent in the city?
Great question. Who wants to take it?
Oh, it's such a great question. When I'm a very proud DC transplant. When I first moved here 8 years ago, I spent a lot of time telling anybody who listened, and probably a few who wouldn't, that there were a couple of reasons why I really fell in love with DC so quickly. And part of it actually was how welcoming I thought the community was, being having a large percentage of the population that's transient by nature, given the nature of administration turnover, there was a warmth and a welcome to the community that I thought made it easier than most to find access and find an on-ramp. The second was, I felt, also in part because the federal government is our anchor tenant, that it was a city very much so built on networking. Like, you go to 2 to 3 events per week. It's very, like, everybody knows how to do the dance and how to spend time. And you know, credit, Tien, to you for getting this back. Like, it's scary. We got to rip the Band-Aid off. This is not a public health commentary nor a political commentary, but it's amazing to be back together in person. Like, geez, this is awesome. And yeah, Tien. And I can tell you from the nature of my day job, being out on the road in cities all across the country, we have been very slow to reconvene in real life as a community. And I think finding, so all that's to say, in a maybe more direct answer to your question, because I do have 2 more reasons on why I love DC, but I'll put a pin in that, is I think, and I was actually guilty of this as well, every few years, some new people come into the community and they say, this doesn't exist, we can go do it. And maybe it doesn't exist, maybe it does exist, you just haven't been invited to that table yet. So I think, one, there's the opportunity that each of us have to take a look around the literal or figurative tables that we sit at and think about what it would look like to make those tables bigger and who's not in your orbit, in your circle. So how can we just sort of cross-pollinate so many of the existing communities that exist here? And you can do it through big events like this. You can do it through smaller dinner series. I'm not saying that events are the beginning and the end of the answer to all of this, but I do think a sense of community and not just finding your tribe, but finding that circle of champions. Because there are a lot of, to Sada's point, there are a lot of other things that you can do to support startups that doesn't involve money. And figuring out how you find your tribe, you mentor in that tribe, you become a part of that, I think is a huge part of what DC has been great at. And then the final thing I would add is vacancy rates, I think, don't entirely quote me on this, but I'm relatively certain that vacancy rates in DC are amongst the highest in the country in the downtown urban core. That's terrible and traumatic for a lot of existing business owners in a lot of different ways. But I think the nature of the beast when you push the envelope with innovation and entrepreneurship is that also opens up some other opportunities. So how can we partner with city government, partner with economic development, partner maybe with other funders looking for new opportunities to reimagine spaces in a lot of different ways? Many of us are not going back to offices. What opportunities does that open up? So I think perhaps unlike many other times when people come into the community and they're like, oh, this doesn't exist, let's try it, let's reinvent the wheel. There actually is a great opportunity to properly reinvent a few wheels here, hopefully to the benefit of the city.
Great answer, yeah. Go ahead, Seda.
And as being, again, part of that scene in the good old days, what I thought was great back then is the companies that did see success, paid it forward. So you had your Living Socials, your Vengas, your Mark Ein, as he was kind of putting together and convening people, being conduits for the rest of the startup scene. So, so I would say everybody in this room, think about, again, what could you do to amplify or to add on.
So great. I think we are out of time, but I still want to just pose one final short answer question. We have talked about passion. We have talked about people looking at the vision 10, 20 years. Every time I hear any of these pitches, I feel like they have a big idea. What is your definition of a big idea?
A big idea is that you found a really big problem, you know who has it, you know where they all are, all those people, and and they have proven to you that they will pay you more than it costs for you to make the solution. And the more that gap is, the better.
Yeah, so we're generalists, at least at our firm, we're generalists. So if we take your idea and we call someone who's 20, 30 years in that industry and they go, yeah, no, that's good. No one's ever done that before, or no one's been able to successfully do that before, then that's a big idea.
Great.
This will be my shortest answer of the day. Big idea is when you can make the impossible possible.
Great. And finally, we'll close with you, Chris.
Honestly, summed it up well. I think about it as it's got to be a big problem. If it's a big problem and you have a solution that addresses it, that's a big market.
Well, great. Thank you very much for being panelists. Let's thank them. Thank you for wonderful comments there. Very useful.
Thank you so much, Dean. Let's give it up again for this awesome panel, please. These are some of the top investors in the region. So, we have the place thanks to Tishman till noon. So please visit with our presenting companies and our other sponsors. Go on our website. You'll see information for next Thursday's meeting and our next in-person meeting, July 13th in Tysons. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.